today we welcome a spiritual and life coach, Christina. Thank you for being here with us. And
Thanks for having me.
just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
So for the last about 10 years, I've been working as a spiritual healer, intuitive and life coach. And I've been helping an array of different types of people, from really spiritual individuals to non-spiritual individuals, kind of awaken to their own personal authenticity. Ultimately, I was born with spiritual gifts, so I can talk to spirit realms, I can communicate to guides, I can tap into people's energy fields, as well as the main focus for me has been a lot with people's traumas and their emotional traumas, and working a lot with what we refer to as the shadow emotions deep within someone's subconscious.
Yes.
So that they can shift certain energies and patterns that will then translate in the physical reality.
I see. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how'd you find that? You said that being that you're born with it, what was the point at which you realized that you did have that gift?
I think I knew from like 2 years old, I could feel certain things, but by 6 years old, I knew I was different, because I suffered with more anxiety than like the average child. If I was in a room full of people, I could tell when someone was sick. I could tell when someone had crossed over. Like, it was very, like almost like confusing, because as a kid, you don't necessarily think, oh, that's a deceased loved one that I see in front of me. Mm-hmm. It's more of like, oh, there's someone that you brought too. So like, who's this person that's standing next to you? You know what I mean? And you're having a conversation when they're like, no, they're not here anymore. And you're like, oh, and my mom was kind of like, shh, like, keep it quiet, like, you know? And then you kind of not outgrow it. I thought it was my norm until I got older. And then I realized, I was like, oh, like, this isn't really common in a lot of people.
Yeah.
So,
definitely not common. Definitely.
It's not common. Like, I thought it was something, I mean, everybody has intuition. Everyone has the capability of tapping into, source consciousness and talking to guides and angels and all of that. We all have the capability of doing so. It was just that I did it innately. So it wasn't common. Like, I was like, well, what do you mean you don't talk to your spirit guides? And I was like, okay, I'm weird, but my friends accepted it. They were always like, she's odd, so it is what it is.
Can you turn it on and off? Like, are you like in the shower and it's
so
like
I have the ability. So because of the level of how like my psychic abilities are, I have the capability of turning it on and off. Some intuitives don't have that option, and they do struggle with it quite a fair amount. So I do teach a lot of other intuitives how to be able to tune in, tune out. So important to be able to do that, because you can suffer from a lot of mental health and anxiety, and like you can go a little, not, I wouldn't say crazy or nuts, but you can get depressed very easily.
It kind of does sound like, and I'm not saying it's a mental illness, but I'm just saying, like, just hearing voices or hearing, like, you might think.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was funny because one of my best friends, at one point when I came out to her years later, and I was like, hey, I'm like doing this now full time. And she's like, what do you mean? She's like, you hear voices? And she's like, are you sure you're not schizophrenic? And I was like,
I was about to say, like, that's how,
like,
it sounds
no, there's a difference.
Obviously a line.
Yeah, well, schizophrenia, if you're looking at mental health issues, you're looking at more of paranoia, right? And so it wasn't a paranoia. It was more of like a knowing, and then I would get a validation. There would be a validation in your environment. So like I would think it or hear it, and then it would happen. So I was like, okay, well, clearly I'm not going crazy because it just happened,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
So yeah, so there's a difference, like it's a different feeling, but you definitely need to take very good care of your energy. Like, I don't drink, I don't smoke weed, like I don't do any recreational drugs or anything like that, because I want my auric field to be at its highest frequency.
Of course.
And especially when you're working with multiple dimensions, you will get the good and you will get the bad.
What are your thoughts? Sorry to cut you off. I just got really excited about this. What are your thoughts then? You said you're like pretty much you're a clean person. What are your thoughts on like DMT and things of that nature? Like, what's that one?
Ayahuasca?
Ayahuasca.
Yeah, that like things.
Okay, so let me explain. Yeah, so for someone who says, okay, so we have multiple dimensions, right? So like in the third dimensional perspective that we're all operating with, it's very dense. right? So like, I know that this is a table that I have in front of me. I can feel it. It's very dense.
Okay.
But in the spiritual realms, it's more complex like than that. It's multiple layers of multiple experiences, which isn't dense. That's why manifesting, when you're looking at like, I want to create something, they say visualize what you want to create because it's existing in a different perspective.
Okay.
Now, for instance, when you're taking ayahuasca, if someone has never been, you know, spiritually awakened or even had the understanding of what spirituality is in any which way, it can be really beneficial to take it because it will crack open almost your perspectives to understand and feel multiple dimensions. The problem with that though is it will give you a high, and then when you're coming down off of it, you can fall into deep despair and depression because you don't have the necessary tools to help you deal with the subconscious traumas.
So it's still existing there. It's permeating throughout your life and you don't know how to handle it.
Exactly. And then what happens, and I've seen it happen with many people, is they'll do it. They'll have that awakening period, but then they'll fall right back into the same kind of life and experiences that they were having before, which is like, that's a huge discord. You went from like tapping into fifth, sixth dimension, and now you got just thrown back into your third dimensional perspective. That's going to rock you. It's not going to feel good. So do I recommend taking ayahuasca? No.
Makes sense.
I don't. Do I recommend it for specific types of people? Yes. Okay. Like if I know that you are a spiritually awakened individual that is going to do the work and is really going to dive into your subconscious and you're not scared of the outcome, yeah, go ahead. And you're going to be drawn to it. But for the average individual that's just having a moment of like, I just want to have this experience and then not do anything with it after, I don't recommend it.
I see. So what could prime someone to be more responsive to it? I know you talk about, you know, having that awakening. So what are those steps that could lead someone to that awakening?
Oh, well, you will have to really tap into your pain, the parts of you that you are really, really, really blocking and avoiding, which just take inventory of your current state. So for instance, if you notice that your life isn't really working out the way you've planned, let's say, and you're already struggling and you're in survival mode and you're having all these types of experiences that are not benefiting you in any which way, or you're not growing or expanding, obviously you got to look at that first before you consider doing something else.
Of course.
Right? So like reevaluate that. And then if ayahuasca is going to crack you open to deal with all that, then that's amazing, because that means you're devoting your whole life and experience to that awakening. But if that's not your intention, don't bother doing it.
Okay. I see. And this takes years of work?
Yep.
Years and years.
I feel like a lot of times it's usually like a one-time experience with that kind of.
Some people do it more than once because they keep chasing it, right? Some people, like I've known, have done it more than once, and they do it because they think like, well, I got that first experience, I want to try it again, and it's not the same.
Okay. Is it because you're revisiting new things, or you just still don't know how to handle the core of what it is that?
Both.
Okay.
Both are relevant. Both.
Interesting. And talking about this term dimensions, this is where a lot of people may feel like that's an elusive term, because our language is very limited, especially when you talk about the 3D and the space-time that we're able to comprehend. What does it literally mean, as far as we can explain, to experience another dimension of sorts?
It's a different frequency.
Okay.
You're just tuning into a different frequency. So basically every dimension has its own frequency. So for fourth, fifth dimensional frequencies, you'd be tapping into what we refer to as angels.
Okay.
Okay, what we would refer to as saints, what we would refer to as guardians, right?
Yes.
You tap into sixth, seventh dimensional, you can be tapping into extrasensory or extraterrestrial beings that are working with your energy to help navigate through your reality today. Okay. So every dimension, and as you move into other dimensions and other frequencies, you have the capability of tapping into new knowledge, new understanding, and new awakenings.
And everyone has this ability.
Yeah.
Being a human, being a living being.
Yeah, well, most people don't register that they already have a team of individuals that are working with them from the fourth, fifth dimension.
I see.
But like you already have guides and angels that are a team with you, that are working with you to help and your ancestors, right? Your ancestral line, your DNA, your family, deceased loved ones are all working from the fourth, fifth dimension.
Oh.
How would somebody that's not like yourself be able to tap into these frequencies? Like someone like us.
Okay, so
that
here's the
feel
fine line. The reality of the situation is you don't need to register what frequency you're tapping into. I think what you need to register is what you're healing. So if you need the, like, let's say you want to heal your heart, and you want to heal love in your life, and you want love to come into your life, and you want to attract all that. That's what we refer to as the Christ consciousness, which is ultimately like Jesus.
Yes.
So if you're tapped into that type of frequency, I mean, you'd have to tap into through meditation, through practice of compassion, ultimately compassion within yourself, right?
Yeah.
You're already tapped. When you're doing that, you're tapping into that frequency.
Okay.
It's just, do you get what I'm saying? So like based on what your intention is, you have like, the universe is going to work with you to make you tap into that part of you, that part that exists with you, so that you can tap into that frequency. It's like tuning to like a radio station, right?
Yeah.
Like a dial.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if I just tune into the right type of frequency of what love is, then I know it operates from this dimension, operates in multiple dimensions, but different layers, different frequencies. And as you develop a better understanding of yourself, a better understanding of what your traumas are, you're creating more space within you every time you cry, or every time you purge, or every time you make a shift within yourself, or you walk away from toxic experiences. You're shifting your energy. Your frequency is not going to tap into a different type of frequency. And that could be a fifth dimension. It could be an eighth dimension. It really doesn't matter.
Okay.
What matters ultimately is how you're healing in this physical reality, and what you're manifesting, and what your intentions are. And then those energies are going to come in, and they're going to focus on you.
Okay, I see. So this is an inherent part of who we are. So it's not something that we're reaching out to. It's really inherent in our being and the self that we are right now. It's just that we are tapped in to a third dimensional perspective, if I'm not mistaken, and that's what enables us to experience this density, as you exclaim right here. So just to touch back briefly upon your introduction, how do you personally discern whether it's yourself speaking or you're communicating when you hear and retrieve these impulses?
So it's very simple. I mean, how often do you put doubts in your own head?
Always.
Right, that's you.
Okay.
If it's a confident, almost like a soft, knowing voice of like encouragement, or even just like a dialogue that's happening internally within you, that's usually your guide, or that energy that's working with you to help motivate you to heal. Anything that's like aggressive or that puts you down or anything like that, I mean, obviously could be you, could also be entity attachments, which is a totally different topic. But ultimately, it could just be that, you know, you're talking to you, but the way you speak to yourself isn't your guide. Your guide is never going to put you down. Your guides are never going to tell you something wrong. They're never going to put you in harm's way, ever. Okay. Like, that's not their intention. Their intention is to teach you, to help you, guide you, help you understand, but they would never intervene. They're not allowed to intervene. You have free will. They would never force you to do anything you didn't want to do. They understand things from a very different perspective. Like, we learn lessons here. They are learning with us. They're growing with us as well. They're helping us understand the potential that we could be, the multiple timelines that we could offer for ourselves, because we do have more than one timeline. Nothing is linear.
Yes.
Right? Nothing is linear. We have multiple ways of looking at one experience. And so the best advice I could offer with regards to listening more to your guides and angels is getting into a meditative state. One tip I could offer is automatic writing. So for instance, like getting into a meditative state, sitting and meditating, setting your intention that you're going to talk to your guide, ask a question, and then use your non-dominant hand, or just let them and start writing the answer to the question. 99% of the time, your writing is going to change.
Okay, wow.
So instantly your guide's tapping in. Your guide's going to tap into that stream of consciousness, and they're going to start communicating to you things that you need to work on, things that you need to see, things that you need to say. The language changes. Like they'll start talking like beloved child. They'll say things like that. We want you to know that you are, hugged through this process. Don't worry. Everything's going to work out. However, but I mean, you really have to have a lot of faith and trust in the process. And I think that that's what discourages a lot of people. They don't have a lot of faith within themselves and the process. And it can really construe your way of thinking, right? You have to be very confident in what you believe in.
Okay, makes sense. And from your experience, without getting too egocentric about this, for people who are delving into these concepts and ideas, where do they exist in that? What is their lifestyle like? If they're here to serve us and if they're our guardians and our angels, what is it that they exist in? Do they have their own angels of sorts? Is it a stream of continuous consciousness that then flows through them, or are they source?
So no, well, everybody's part of source.
Okay.
We're part of source. You're part of source. Every part of every existence, like all of us, even right now, are part of each other.
I see.
So even if you look at me and look at you and you think that we're separate from one another, we're not. We're made out of atoms and molecules, and there's so much science behind it, and biology and energy. We are all a stream of consciousness of one another. They are a stream of consciousness as well. They are not physical beings. This is why there's such a confusion about aliens coming to Earth.
Yeah,
it doesn't work like that because we're too dense of a frequency. Aliens can't physically manifest themselves in this reality as a physical source of being. Oh. They can't. They can only stream their consciousness in.
And that's what we understand as our intuition when we communicate with them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So it's not a...
You can't see them? You're saying?
It depends on what type of ability you have. Like, sometimes I can see them, sometimes I don't need to see them. It's not even like I need to see something physically. It's just like I can tap into the energy that's coming in right now. Like right now, there's a source of energy that's working with me while we're having this conversation. It's a point of perspective for you guys, and it's a point of perspective for the information that's going to benefit you guys the most. So because I'm energetically tapped into that frequency, I'm allowing, let's say, an 8th dimensional being tapped into my perspective to have a conversation with you guys.
And then you're channeling it, and that's what we perceive this.
Not challenging, and I'm mediating.
Being it, okay.
I have complete control over myself.
Okay. I
don't allow anything to have control over me. I am not channeling information, I'm mediating. Because it's like a frequency that's coming in, and then I'm translating it and I'm mediating it.
Okay, very interesting.
I don't believe in channeling.
Okay, makes sense. Is there a certain tension you have towards that term, or is it just outright not right?
I don't believe that there should be any source of stream of consciousness externally from myself to have power over me in any which way.
Okay.
Because I came here with my perspective and my ability to want to learn and grow and be the best version of me. It wouldn't make sense for me not to be here as an individual and having my experiences and then having an entity or stream of consciousness take over.
Yeah, it makes sense.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not being the best version of me doing that. That's like them coming in and doing all the work and then leaving me. And then I'm like, well, what just happened?
Exactly, yeah. Just
like I didn't grow from that. Like there's no growth in that. And sometimes, you know what, too, like you shouldn't really, like I've met people who channel. And wow, like their physical bodies have taken quite a hit.
Really?
Yeah.
But even if it's supposed to be benevolent channeling?
You have to understand the frequency. Right? Like if you could understand like an 8th dimensional being or 7th dimensional being tapping into a 3rd dimensional being, that's a whole discord of energy.
Yeah. Like
I would have to be so high in frequency in order for that to happen, for them to physically allow that energy to translate within me. It's going to blow up my nervous system.
Okay. It's an overload at that point because of what our 3D body can handle.
Yeah.
So then what makes us exclusively us as a human being? Like you, Christina, myself, Anthony, Michael, what is the exclusivity there that makes us a unique being?
Our identifications, right? Like how we define ourselves, how we take the moments to understand that we have free will.
Okay.
How we navigate through our choices, how we even call ourselves Christina. Like, I'm Christina. This is
Yeah.
what I do. This is
Yeah.
what I like. This is how I eat. This is when I sleep. You know what I mean? Like, how we defined ourselves as a human species is how we are unique from the energies outside of ourselves.
Okay. And then therefore we're the ones perceiving these experiences
Yeah.
that we ever so desire and intend on.
Yes.
I see. And from what from a conversation that we've had previously, you talk about the difference between conscious intending as well as your subconscious tendencies, and that your subconscious is actually what's directing that frequency rather than just the face value of this is what I want and this is what I'm going to go after. So how does someone understand what their subconscious tendencies are?
Take a look and take an inventory of your life and what's not working in your life right now.
Okay.
Whatever isn't working in your life right now is linked to trauma from your childhood, which is what is in the subconscious parts of you. The parts of you that you are not awake to, the parts of you that your mind has shut down to protect you from the pain. Ultimately, your ego is just protecting you from pain. It's not your enemy.
Okay.
Ego is not your enemy. What it is a defense mechanism against pain. That's all it is. And so ultimately what it comes down to is we need to become aware of what isn't working in our reality and then look at that, observe it, and then become aware of how that pattern exists within your subconscious. Where did it stem from? And the more and more you, and everyone assumes like if I think it, then I can shift my reality. Your subconscious is directing every vibration that you are attracting in your current state now.
And and you have to align yourself with that subconscious, your conscious thought with the subconscious?
So what you want to do is shine light from your consciousness to the dark parts of you. So what you want to do, let's say for instance, you struggle with finances, right? Yeah. You struggle with money. And you have this adverse kind of way of looking at what money is all about. Or maybe you have belief systems around like money is corrupt, whatever. They're like, we shouldn't like love money. Money is just whatever, right? But you constantly are struggling with money. The reality is money is just an exchange of value. That's all it is. So like if you value me, then you're going to pay me for the thing that you value for.
Yes.
And so if you understand that, then you're in a better feeling vibrational space than like having a conspiracy around money. But if you are someone who has that belief system, you need to examine that belief system because that's something within your subconscious.
Okay.
That means that there's something within you that is not in alignment to making money, that probably was something that was, created in your childhood. Let's say dad had a gambling problem, hypothetically, or he had addictions or whatever. And so all his money went towards that. You developed an idea that the reason why my dad is the way it is because of his addictions, but you're not registering that you now hate not only the addiction and what money did and all that was taken from your childhood. Yeah. So there's an absence of something. And so that absence stays within your subconscious. And it's like, no matter how hard you try to make it better, no matter how hard you're trying to connect to that part of you, if you're not dealing with the lack of it and you're not dealing with the trauma that's associated with it, you're going to have a hard time attracting money.
I see. Okay.
So you want to bring awareness to the part that's lacking something in your physical, because then you can look within yourself and address it. And that's when you start bringing things into alignment, because you're becoming aware of the part that you weren't unaware of.
Oh, and your conscious ability allows you to direct your thought there. And then the actual frequency that you're changing is the feeling in the subconscious, correct?
Depending if you are not resistant.
Okay. And those are the subconscious blockers?
That's the conscious blocker.
Okay.
So how about this then? What if you don't, if you think that all this, what we're talking about is just, go on.
Stop that thought right now. When I said that to you, did you feel a sense of relief?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I honestly,
because I didn't feel like I had to be so in control.
I felt like it was like, what was it called? Like more affirmation. I kind of felt like that. Honestly, I feel like for my own self, I don't like to usually talk about ourselves on this, but I feel like I know myself a lot. And I definitely feel like I always say it to myself is to think about stuff that's actually like negative in my life. I really like to think about it all the time. And I don't even think about it in this way. I just talk to myself like that. So
But did you notice how that made you feel like a sense of opening when you said that? It was like
Yeah.
that's settling in. That means that that's letting go of the resistance. And that means like, oh, I am doing that. There is something within me that's making sense of allowing my consciousness to become aware of the parts of me that I'm not aware of, so that there's an integration.
Okay, I see.
There's a connect. We're building a bridge.
What if you are thinking that everything we just spoke in the last, for this whole podcast, let's say, is fake, and they don't believe this consciousness, they don't believe any of this topic.
Welcome to my life.
How
Welcome to my life, right? Right. You know what? You have to let go of the insecurities. You will not please everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You will, and you know what? One of the biggest things that I learned in the last 10 years of me doing this, number one, I'm really good at what I do. Number two, I've helped an immense amount of people.
Of course.
That there are good days and definitely there are bad days. But the reality is I learned that I don't care what anybody thinks, because they're not the ones that are navigating in my reality. I'm far better off than most individuals are in their own personal perspectives. And obviously I want the best for everybody, but I don't have time to waste on people who don't want to think the way I think.
That's fair.
Okay, makes sense.
Like I don't mind debating it or having a conversation without being met with resistance. Mm-hmm. Like if someone is trying to prove their point and trying to belittle my perspective, I don't have the time for it. But if someone is genuinely asking, like, I just don't get it, it doesn't make sense to me, I don't mind taking the time to work with them until they make sense of it as best as they can. You know, because you have to understand, not everybody's ready to hear this. Mm-hmm. Not everybody's ready to embrace any of this. And so that's okay.
They have to be open-minded. They can be
It's
curious.
not about being open-minded. It's just being respectful. It's like, okay, you know what? That's a different way of looking at that. I never thought about that. That's cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I have to be just as open as any other person, if especially with the work that I do, because I can feel when someone is in a resistant state, how their mind closes off like this. And so like instantly I'm like, okay, now I have to try this technique in order for me to get through this perspective. It's just about understanding people at the end of the day. I used to want to make everybody understand all this information. Trust me. I used to be like, please just like hear me out. You know? Now I'm like, okay, well, I guess this didn't work for you. See you in like 5 years when you finally get it, then come talk to me.
Yeah, that's fair. And I was curious if you have, when you meet with clientele and you can feel that there might be a sort of resistance or reluctance to responding to this type of information, do you have a certain way to go about it? Like, do you have a uniform way of going about it initially, or do you have certain primers that allow people to kind of put their barriers down?
So one of my abilities is that I can, like I said, tap into different frequencies. And so if I don't talk to every client the way I'm talking to you guys.
It makes sense. Yeah.
Like, it's not, I work with what they come with. So like if I'm doing a reading, obviously if you're coming to me because you want help, you're coming to me because you want help. And so based on what I'm going to tell you in that moment is what you need. And whatever I'm going to help you with emotionally, whether we're doing inner child work, whether I'm just motivating you to become differently or shift your perspective, I'm going to use specific wording, dialogue. Sometimes I often hear a lot of my clients tell me that that's exactly what my therapist said.
There we go. That's what they hear.
Yeah, I've had people tell me, wow, that was like what my psychotherapist said to me, but you just told me it in, like you said it in such a way, and now I'm crying and I feel like I understand it so differently, and like I've shifted this part of me, and because of that, this happened or this changed. Or so it's interesting because it's not like my ability, because I can tap into so many different frequencies and energies, I can talk to people in different ways.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That gives me the permission to be able to help that person see the different perspective, as long as they're willing to do the work. And if they are not ready for it, then they will resist it and they won't be around. Like they'll listen to it and then they'll just move on with their lives. And maybe they'll get it in like 5 years.
How long does this work take? Like, let's say like, because what it seems like it's like
ongoing journey. There is no end destination. Have fun trying to find a beginning and an end. It does not exist because you're not linear. We are not linear.
Okay.
Our experiences are, so in our realities today, right? When we're in the third dimensional as our human beings, we're having experiences because we need to learn parts of ourselves to awaken parts of ourselves. The more and more we become awakened, the more and more enlightened we are, right? The reality is the minute you're born, you're enlightened because you're source consciousness. But ultimately, there is no beginning and there is no end, because my consciousness, the minute I cross over, it doesn't die. Like, unless you're an atheist and you believe everything dies, and so be it. Do you know what I mean? Like, great for you. That's your perspective. Maybe it won't be your perspective in another lifetime or in another experience. But the reality is my stream of consciousness will never die.
Okay. And that's what's so hard to comprehend, because we view things in such a linear manner. So especially when you look at concepts such as infinity, it's hard to conceptualize such a concept because we view things as if it's going somewhere. Right? So how would you describe things that are not linear? Again, I know language is very limited, but in a way that you've had experiences with.
Sorry, before you go on, also add in to what you're thinking about, included death with all this.
Okay.
So, yeah. Because I really want to hear what you think about that. So,
I want to explain every universal concept in 45 minutes.
There we are. I'm sitting back.
Okay, so linear perspective, I mean, the only way that I can probably paint this out for you as best as I can based on what I'm looking at is the multiple perspectives. So like, if you understand free will, then there are multiple choices based on one perspective. So I have the choice to make, to shift anything in my reality based on whatever choice I make. And I can always change my mind. That's kind of like how it's not linear, because if I can change, like, let's say I wanted to lose like a lot of weight, right? I can consciously choose that. So like, if my focus is now I'm losing all the weight, eating really well, doing what I want to do, and I'm like motivated to do that, that's one perspective. But let's say I'm motivated to do that for 6 months, and then all of a sudden my trauma shows up again, and now I'm binge eating again. Now that's pulled me into another perspective. And then like, all of a sudden I'm like, well, I should go deal with the fact that I have an addiction to food. Then I go to therapy. That pulls me into another perspective. Do you see how none of it is linear?
Constantly changing.
So it's not constantly like one, you know, there's
so it's like a spiral, right?
And
like,
it's not branching out, like, oh, you made a decision here and then it branches out. It's constantly one universal.
Like branches, like you're looking at branches of one experience. And that one experience has millions of ways of looking at that. That's why nothing is like, the people who look at me, who like, when I look at it and they're like, I have a plan and my life is going to go like this. And then they're like 50 and they're like, holy shit, man, I hate my life. What the hell happened here?
No.
Sorry if I swear. But the reality is like, well, yeah, because you stayed in one linear perspective and that made you miserable because you decided that there was nothing more out there for you. There were no other choices that you could make. And this is where mental health kicks in, depression, addictions. This is why people do what they do, because they had a vision of a plan and they didn't work with the universe. They didn't allow the universe to bring something better.
Okay, because they're resistant.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know better. Like, if I want $100,000 in my bank account, I'm not going to go, like, maybe I'm going to hustle to get it. But at the same time, like, I also have to open myself up to the opportunities of how I can get $100,000.
Without being fixated on one way of going about it.
Exactly.
Okay.
You can't. Because that's linear. That's what linear perspective is, which is third dimensional thinking.
Yes.
Third dimensional thinking is, I wake up in the morning, I've got my routine, I eat, I do blah, 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 blah. Right? But if I'm in that one perspective, number one, I'm not expanding. Number two, I'm not becoming aware of anything. Number three, I'm not growing from that experience. And guess what? You will suffer. You will suffer immensely. You will have mental health issues. You will have addictions. You will have so many contrasts, because what the universe is trying to do is awaken you. Like, hey, why aren't you doing something different here? Why aren't you changing something? Look at this perspective. Because you're living in a resistant state. And then guess what ends up happening? Your physical body starts to deteriorate. Your physical body starts to take cancer. And I think this year in 2021, energetically, we are actually going to come the world is going to come to a conclusion with Cancer. There's going to be more healings and stuff.
Love that.
But Cancer is very much linked to inner child trauma. So I've met a lot of people who have, conquered cancer, had cancer, or even going through cancer. And the one thing that I can talk to them about the most is that, like, from an external standpoint, they're like super happy people and everything's great. And like, no, you have to be positive and la, la, la. It's something inside of them is eating them. And they're just not dealing with it.
Okay.
So again, like this third dimensional thinking of what a linear perspective is, there is multiple ways of looking at one perspective. And if we were just open to that, less resistant to it, we would have so much working for us. Because literally, guys, the universe works with you.
Love it.
If it is not working with you, then you have mommy issues and you need to work with that.
There we go. That's
It's some sort of childhood issue.
Mommy. Specifically an issue with your mother.
for everyone.
Yes.
Oh wow. So does what can then enable someone to become more receptive to making a change for someone who's not at all focused on this, this type of healing, this holistic healing, this sense of understanding?
Look,
yourself?
healing comes in multiple forms. It could come in a relationship that shows up in your life. It could come in, a new tool that you're learning. It could come in something that you're studying. It could come in like working with a therapist. It could come in with just like having a heart-to-heart with like a family member that you had issues with. Like, the universe is always going to take every single advantage because it's not linear in its thinking.
Okay.
And it will find ways to bring in what it is that your intention is.
So both Michael and myself, just to illustrate this concept a little bit more, we've both read the books Think and Grow Rich and The Surrender Experiment. Now, on face value, those both operate on both sides of the same scale, whereas The Surrender Experiment talks about completely letting go. Michael A. Singer, it was his experiment. This is what he wrote in his book about, where he wanted to go on a spiritual journey to quiet the voice in his head. And he did so by completely surrendering and not having any kind of desires and not any preferences in life. And it's not renunciation, but it's about just kind of letting the universe flow through you.
So he's not explaining it correctly though.
Okay.
So the idea that he let go of his ego mind and that he's letting go of resistance and not allowing desire to come in, I'm sorry, but the fact that he's even setting that intention is a desire in its own.
Okay, I see.
It's a desire in its own. We are a species based on desire, whether we like it or not. Even just saying, I would love to have pizza today is a desire.
Yes.
Do you get what I'm saying? Or like, oh my God, I just feel like I need to go take a shower right now.
Of
is
course.
a desire.
Yes.
Do you get what I'm saying? So even though we're having our day-to-day experiences, we desire all day, every day. It's part of our expansion. It's part of how we were designed. It's our design.
Abraham and Jerry Hicks talk about this. They say whether or not you want to expand, it's an inherent part of who we are in the universe. We're always growing. And it's just, and we have the ability to navigate that with our free will and with our consciousness.
Exactly. So that book that you read is one branch based on multiple perspectives.
I see. And then, like I said, there's also Think and Grow Rich, which is all about desires and intentions. You go after what you want.
So what do you believe in? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Contradicting information. You will always get contradicting information because my perspective and your perspective could be completely different based on our traumas. So like, maybe for me, intention setting would be a better way of looking at financials versus me letting go of the resistance because maybe I have too much control over financials. Different perspectives, different branches, but we're still talking about one topic, money.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Because the base of the tree is money. Now, all those perspectives don't come linear. It's multiple ways of looking at it. Ultimately, if you want money, you need to know what your value is, period. That's how it works. So if you register what your value is and what you can bring to the table, no matter what the circumstances are, like you have something to offer, you will always have money.
Okay. Because that's what the money is used as a transactional tool for at the end of the day.
And one of the best tools to use if you want to learn how to be more receptive to the energy of money is sit in a meditation and focus on your breathing. Breathe in, receive, let go, exhale, let go, give. breathe in, receive. So it becomes this ongoing exchange of energy within you. And the more and more you cultivate that type of energy, the more you're going to attract that type of frequency, giving and receiving.
And is that frequency?
Like a pulsation.
It's the feeling?
Yeah, it's a pulsation. It's an energetic pulsation. So like I'm literally creating like an energy vortex based on giving and receiving.
Okay. Wow. So do you think that this information should be brought to young children in the education system? Or
no.
So
I think we need to educate parents because children are in their infinite perspectives. They're using their imagination. I think school systems are going to start changing in general. I think they're going to start incorporating more feelings, more emotions, more intuition, all that kind of stuff, meditation. That is like, I wish that was part of my generation. Do you know what I mean? Because I think like, had I known from that time and that age, I think like, wow, I would have been completely different. But you still have to go through your lessons in life and experiences because that's part of our learning, right? I personally think we need to educate more parents. So parents need to learn how to do this and let your child, because like a child's going to tell you innately from when they're really little what they like doing, what they don't like doing, and what they're actually in alignment to do. Like it's not just like I'm going to do a picture in art. Like my child is showing evidence that they're like extremely artistic. Why am I forcing them to like focus solely on math and English and language when they could be amazing artists? Mm-hmm. Like we need to nurture more of what they're really good at. But unfortunately, our school systems are like herds, right? So like we put all the children and we teach them the same way. I was born dyslexic. I'm dyslexic. And so I struggled in school a lot. I struggled in school in so many ways, but I also look at it as a blessing because I was diagnosed in grade 4 with dyslexia. And I don't know if you know what dyslexia is. Do you guys know what that is? Okay. So I was diagnosed with dyslexia and I'm an atrocious speller. So like, it's so difficult for me to letters, like they're just like backwards, like my brain just operates very differently. I did a lot of research later on and I wanted to understand why I had developed that type of learning disability. And ultimately it's because my brain is wired completely different. My perspective and how I see my reality is far different than how you perceive your reality. So I can visualize something and make it like concrete happen in my physical reality in a more rapid pace because of my learning disability. Dyslexia has a way of looking at the third dimensional and making things happen in the physical. And not only that, but most mediums, individuals who can talk to spirit or realms, have suffered some form of a learning disability and have dyslexia. So what I thought was a curse from when I was really little, and you know, when you're thrown in the school system at a very young age, you're going to conform, right? So if I was just a child that was conforming to the day-to-day experiences, I wouldn't be able to do the work that I do today as freely, as open, as less resistance as I'm doing them now. Because I was pulled out of the actual process.
Conformity.
I actually was pulled out and pulled into smaller groups. So I had like a class of like 3 or 4 kids with one teacher, and like we were learning very different than like being in a class with like 30 other children.
I see. Yeah.
So like, so imagine now if we specialized in learning what the child's needs are at a very young age and then just nurtured that.
That would be amazing if we could do it more like that.
Yeah.
I don't know how it would work financially, but 100% I'd be down for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to the parents too. At the end of the day, that's why I'm saying I wish I could educate. I mean, I get asked to quite often to educate parents on how to parent children, right?
Well, this is the perfect time actually to talk about parenting, and because you know during COVID now, the parents are pretty much teaching their kids. And doing their homework with them every single day because they're living together. And so coupled with that, like
they're not quite ready yet.
I want to know also on top of that, what do you think? It's been, what has it been? Over a year now we've been trapped in our homes pretty much.
Yep.
Like how do you incorporate everything we talked about pretty much like into your day to day? That would be, now that we've been stuck at home and our mental health is a little bit different because We're not really going outside as much. We're not really talking to anybody. We're not really doing anything. We're literally stuck in our houses.
It's funny that my sister and I had this conversation earlier about like mental health being on a rise right now. And it goes back to that linear perspective. It goes back into thinking that I can't do more and branch out and look at different options. And we're going to have to learn how to adapt. We're a species of adaptations, and we need to learn how to be resilient. At the end of the day, I mean, like if you're feeling isolated and alone, I understand how painful that is. I get loneliness, and it's a pandemic. That and alone is a pandemic,
Oh, yeah.
right? Loneliness, and people are fucking suffering on a high scale of a lot, right? The reality of the situation is we need to learn how to nurture ourselves. Like I've met people who don't understand what, like they're like, well, I don't really do anything else other than go home, eat, sleep, work. Right. And then like Friday night, I was hanging out with my friends, drinking and partying and doing that. And it's like, okay, well, now that you're home, what do you want to do? So my advice to that, I mean, other than the fact that, you know, you should probably be upping your therapy, you should be taking very good care of your eating, like taking probiotics, making sure that you're taking care of your health. Like this is a great opportunity to get your health at par. Like really make a conscious effort to eat better, to spend 20 minutes to half an hour exercising a day, open up a window, go for a walk. Like all that plays a significant role on your mental health. If you are obviously complaining and you're not liking the fact that if you think things are going to go back to normal, then there's a rude awakening, because the reality is there's no norm of a normalcy that's going to come back. So we have to adapt to this new, and you know what? I hate to say it like this, and I don't mean it in any negative way at all. All of this has to come to surface, because the people that have been suppressing a lot of their depression and sadness and loneliness and the people that weren't talking about it because they were too busy running. Gotta go to work, gotta grab the kids, I gotta go do the next thing. You know, like I'm so busy, I can't think about being, I'm so busy, I can't think about being stressed. I can't think about all these things that are going on, right? You're being forced to now. If you want to heal the planet, you gotta heal yourself first. If you want, like, even whatever's going on, like the resistance that's going on in the States right now, and how there's this like divide, that's the divide that's existing within every single person within our own personal consciousness. That goes into what am I aware of? What am I unaware of? What can I change to make things better? If we want things to become whole and we want things to become better, we need to learn how to do that for ourselves first. We need to learn how to bridge those parts of ourselves, because feeding into media and all the other sources of information that you have are affecting your mental health, period.
Well, I definitely think with social media, social media now is like the vehicle that people they amplify. They have all this all this emotions, and it's built up and built up and built up.
Not just verbal diarrhea, like a production of vomit, right?
On Twitter or something.
Yeah, and it's sad because like I look at certain people, even my own clients, like my clients they don't think I pay attention. I pay attention to everything, right? And I'm like, okay, I'll see you in a week. I'll see you in a month, you know, and we'll have a conversation. And what's funny is like, I'm like, but you're talking about what's going on in the media, your political viewpoints, all that, but you're not physically doing anything.
Yeah, it makes, and that's comes from, I took and it's not to take a turn, this is to correspond exactly with what you're saying, is I very briefly took it was a course on Mind Valley, if you're familiar with the...
Sorry, say that again, what?
I took a course on Mind Valley, if you're familiar with the company Mind Valley.
No.
It's, they're doing amazing work. They're an educational tech company, and what they do is they're focused on personal growth. And I came across one of the courses, and they talk about, just as what you're saying, it's not necessarily even the law of attraction. He refers to Michael Beckwith, who is actually in The Secret. He says it's not necessarily the law of attraction. That kind of has an odd connotation to it. It's more so the law of resonance. It's you being it. So it's not necessarily you, when this happens, then I can pursue this. It's actually you being it right now in the moment, because we exist right here and now. And that's where this presence and gratitude comes into play, which I suppose will compound into other experiences with presence and gratitude and those feel-good emotions, correct?
Yes. One of the tools that I use, like, because if I feel like hopeless, Like I feel hopeless sometimes because I'm like, I just want to save all the animals and I want to save all the people and all the children. And what am I doing? My husband's like, calm down. And he's like, you need to take a breath. And I'm like, but I can't, you know, I do. I obviously get overwhelmed because I'm looking at multiple timelines all the time. And I'm looking at like, holy shit, civil wars. And oh my God, like it's going to take another 2 years until everybody gets vaccinated. And then we're going to have the anti-vaxxers. And then we're going to have this. And then we're going to have all these things that are coming up. And then I'm like, oh, I can't. So what I do is I sit in a meditation and I think about the collective consciousness. And I just sit and I think, let me get everybody grounded. Let me just get everybody that's affecting my energy, that's affecting my space, that's affecting my mental health, that's affecting how I feel right now. If they can influence me, I can influence them.
Yeah.
And I may not necessarily see you in person or may even know you. But the fact that my energy is expanding to where you're at, and if you can influence me, I have just as much power. So I sit in a meditation, especially when I feel like almost like earthquakes, and we're going to have more of those coming up in the world in general. But ultimately, like that shaking, that awakening that's going on, I sit and I just think about that energy and I just set the intention that I'm going to bring everybody down to get grounded, to heal and do whatever that intention may be. And it literally is like 10 minutes. Wow. I feel amazing after I do it. And then I guarantee you, like my clients call me, people message me and they're like, oh, I just feel like a breath of fresh air. I don't know what it is. I'm like, yeah, I don't tell everybody I do that because then everyone's going to be like, can you put me in your prayers all the time?
Yeah, because it sounds like a prayer. It sounds kind of like a prayer what you're doing.
Sure, absolutely. However you want that practice to be. And you definitely do have more power. And like, I think like, even if you know someone who's struggling with mental health and addiction, one of the biggest things that I would say is you can't physically help them get out of the state that they're in. They have to want to do it for themselves.
Yeah, makes sense.
And the only thing that you can do is talk to the higher self of that person and the consciousness that they're in and just work with that. Okay. Work with that energy and allow that to be present within yourself and so on. And even if it means that you have to cut ties with that person, you can still make a conscious effort to do that through prayer, through meditation, through tapping into the consciousness.
And when it comes to the autonomy of someone doing this on their own behalf, or at least taking that first step, especially people who are struggling with mental health and want to take that first step into their personal growth and just to feel better, essentially, it seems to be, from what I've heard, is that it's a lot about starting off with just understanding who you are before taking that action. So what do you suggest is the best way, or one of the most effective ways, at least, for people to just understand who they are first so that they can have a foundation to grow from and then pursue things that are congruent with who they want to be?
Ask the people around you.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Ask the people around you to identify how they see you.
Okay, interesting. And how do you know that it's going to be synonymous with who you really are?
Doesn't really matter. What matters in the moment is that everybody's going to see you in a different light and a different perspective. And then you have to challenge the way you see yourself. So when you get this information, let's say you get like 10 of your friends to write down like a paragraph or two about what they think and feel about you. It may be similar. So you may have like, he's really caring and he's really compassionate and so on. So you're going to know like, wow, people think I'm really compassionate. Why don't I feel that?
Oh.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
wow, this person tells me I give amazing hugs. I must be really good at connection. Why don't I feel that?
Yeah.
Do you get it?
So like, and then you could take deliberate effort to then attune to those perspectives of yourself.
So that's a great stepping stone of developing a very good sense of self. What are the hardest? And then tell them to tell you your negatives too.
And then what do you do
the best part?
What does someone do from there if it is?
What do you hate the most about me? Like, what do you dislike in me, or like don't find it, like content about me? Ask them.
And then they can work with that constructively.
Well, not only just that, but then you have to identify the trauma surrounding that. Like if there's someone is saying you're super stubborn sometimes and you don't listen and you're hard-headed, why?
I want to say that you make such an immense impact on everyone that you communicate with, such as myself, Michael as well. And I know I have friends who also come to you. And on a final note, if you could just tell people about where to find you, and we'll go from there.
So my website is www.ChristinaProkos.com, but I'm on Instagram under Christina Life Spiritual, or you can look me up as Christina Prokos. I do have a YouTube channel as well. I mean, I'm out there, so the information is there. That's pretty much it.
Perfect.
Amazing.
Thank you so much. We truly appreciate you being